What the fuck?
What's going on, guys? Big Al's Bike and Auto coming at you, and we are back on the Navigator. There was a lot of hate in the comments in the last video about my attitude toward the truck and the Mercedes. You gotta understand something, and I put this as a pinned comment on that video. That was a crazy day, guys. I bought both those vehicles not expecting to win them at all. Didn't plan the pickup. I had to get George last minute and his buddy to drive an hour out of their way to come up with me to the auction in the freezing cold. And I get there, and the first thing I see is low brakes written on the Mercedes. And some of you are saying, well, what'd you expect? It's an auction. Not everything is described. Of course, you know, I've been doing this for years and years and years. I've been at this auction many times, Copart, Mannheim, all different types of auctions. I know that, I'm no idiot. But this auction, I have to give them credit. They usually do a wonderful job of describing issues with the online cars. And George's Geo Metro, for example, said that it had a running issue, meaning it wouldn't stay running. So again, they usually describe pretty well what the vehicles need. And you can see in the pictures of the Mercedes, there was no writing on the window at that time saying low brakes. Perhaps that developed afterwards, after they had put the car up on the website. But again, I wasn't expecting that. They're usually very good about representing issues with the vehicles on the online auction. So seeing that, knowing that I just dragged those guys up over an hour to probably not even be able to drive that thing back was very disappointing. And when you think brake line issues, generally you're going to have rust issues underneath the vehicle as a whole. So that was very discouraging, put me in a bad mood. Then I get over the Navigator, and I didn't really have high expectations for this thing. How could you for 300 bucks? But as soon as I opened the door and saw just how trash the interior was, and the Intoxilock paperwork, and the scratch-offs, and the seats, I said, this truck, there is just no way in hell this thing is going to run well, it's going to drive well. And when I first looked at it, because a lot of the tires were flat, it looked like the rear suspension was sagging, and I said, geez, this thing still has the original air suspension, it's probably bad. You know, that right there costs much more than the truck is even worth to remedy, even to do a coil conversion. So I'm thinking I just bought a big paperweight that's worth nothing. You guys watching the video, you obviously saw in that video, minutes later, the truck ended up being pretty damn good for the money, but I didn't know that at the time, obviously. I hadn't driven it yet. It took us forever to get the thing running. I cut all that footage out to keep the video shorter. I had to put 2 different batteries in it. I had to have the guy come over with the jumper pack. That took forever. So we finally got the damn thing running. We barely had any time to get the 2 cars out of there before they closed. Otherwise, we'd have to come back Tuesday. And we already made the trip up there, so you bet your ass that wasn't an option. And I get in the thing, and the steering's not working. The Mercedes, the brakes aren't working. It was just a total nightmare. To me, at that time, they were 2 big pieces of junk. Obviously, by the time I was halfway down the road with this thing, I realized, besides the steering, it drove very nice. And then eventually, the service lights all went away. And I've discovered more and more about it now that I have it at home. Like that there isn't a manifold leak, that the suspension's already been converted to coils, that there's no more service lights on the dash. So it's not a bad truck at all. Now I'm very happy with the purchase. I would buy it all over again. I don't regret it at all. I'm really dying to get into this thing and clean up the inside. I may show it in this video. I took a clip last night when I did start this thing up to move it in here. I found out the manifolds are actually leaking. EGR thing. Now, those 2 things right there, watch this. So anyway, back to the detailing here. I'm going to show you guys, obviously, before. Inside the truck, we'll get a best look we can at how nasty it is in here. There was paperwork in here for an Intoxilock system, so whoever owned this truck had a drinking problem, enough DUIs that he had a Intoxilocks in here, and if you don't know what that is, you cannot start the vehicle without blowing into a breathalyzer. And if you pass, it'll let you start the truck. If not, you're not going anywhere. There's a whole stash of lottery tickets in here. George was saying I should go ahead and do the second chance play on them and see maybe if I pay for the truck with these things. I doubt it, but I'll look into that. So all kinds of scratch-offs here in the door pocket and just trash littered everywhere. The WD-40 is mine. I was lubing up the U-joints here in the steering column. There's some underneath the dash. There's some in the engine bay I have to hit as well. I don't think it's the power steering pump because the fluid is full. The truck hasn't been leaking power steering fluid, so I'm assuming that the rack is okay, that the power steering's okay, because I'm not seeing any evidence underneath the truck of a leak. So probably the U-joints. A lot of you were saying it's a common issue with these trucks. They start to stick, and you get that steering working intermittently. But the truck needs a good cleaning. It needs a dusting. These seats are a mess. If I'm able to find a cheap pair of junkyard seats, I'll throw them in. If not, you know, it is what it is. Maybe some seat covers. This one is, you know, it's ugly, but it's not that bad. There's no major holes, just some tears here and there. Pretty big rip right there, but you're sitting there anyway when you're driving the truck. Aside from that, I really haven't looked much more through this interior. A lot of the power options, the only ones I've tested, do work. The power rear liftgate does work. The power seats. Really, this truck isn't that bad at all. It's just very dirty. The cosmetics on the outside are actually very good. There's no major rust anywhere. The rocker panels are solid. All right, guys, so I cleaned out everything that was in here. Tons of service history in this truck. It's a one owner. The guy bought it brand new. His wife looks like drove it until 2015, and he started using it and racking up the miles on it. Went from 115,000 miles in 2015 to 238,000 here today in early 2019. So mostly highway miles in this truck. It's had a lot of good service done to it. You can see obviously a lot of dirt on the steering wheel and dust up on the dash, crap all over the floor. You know, the center console's dirty, but really it's not as bad as I thought. I'd much rather have a truck like this. It's a little dirty on the inside, but has good maintenance history and lots of scratch-offs. Yeah, you know, you gotta feel bad. This guy obviously had some issues with gambling and drinking. I'd rather have a truck like this, needs a good thorough cleaning, but was maintained very well mechanically, than have one that's spotless and the oil was never changed and it needs all kinds of suspension work and engine work. So this is going to clean up great. Look at how dirty this shifter is here. A little bit of purple power. Check this out. I have to use the brush, believe it or not, because wouldn't even take any of this off with just a paper towel. You can see it's starting to come back. Still have to get all that. All right, so just a little update. Been cleaning for quite a while now. I've got the truck pretty much close to done. The dashboard's all cleaned up. Center console, got all the dirt off the shifter and the armrest here. Here are some of the more interesting things I've found in the truck. You can make of these whatever you want. I have some ideas as to what these might be from. And this as well. This is one of those old e-cigs. It still works too. Who knows what's actually in there, but ew, what I thought that was the button. So one of the ones that I think you just drag on it and it automatically rips, but it was lighting up when I took it out of the door card. We're not going to test it out obviously, but nothing's poked me yet, thank God. Been very careful about that. Found some house keys in here, some more paperwork, golf balls. Nothing too crazy yet. The only thing I haven't tried yet on the steering wheel is Magic Eraser to get that grime off the wheel. It is on there real thick. I've tried everything, even rubbing alcohol, which normally I wouldn't want to touch on something leather, but it's on there so heavy. I've tried everything. I've tried brushes. Not much of it's coming off. So I might try Magic Eraser. After that, if I can't get it off, honestly, I'll just throw a steering wheel cover on it. Overall, it's cleaning up. You know, it's not going to be a perfect interior, but it'll certainly be a world better than it was before. These buttons I cleaned up as well, the cluster, everything that can be cleaned tonight I'm cleaning. Just to give you an idea of how much crap was in this interior, I've just been throwing out the big items so they don't get clogged up in my vacuum, and that's not even half of it. You just look in here, for example. I mean, what do you expect? It was a family SUV. So I just pulled the Navigator out. It's the next day. Last night I WD-40'd the U-joints underneath the dash here in the steering column, and also the ones in the engine bay. And I'm happy to report that the power steering is now working as it should. You can see once again, no service lights. Got the interior much more clean than it was before. Not perfect, but definitely clean enough to drive it. All right, so I fixed the EGR leak on the Navigator. Wasn't easy because the little plastic tips that stick out of the EGR itself were broken off, which is why the hoses were missing. So I stuck some new hose on there, and I just kind of had to jam the hoses in there and tape them on real good to the EGR block. More of a temporary thing until I can get the EGR. They're like 10 bucks for a brand new one, and it's 2 bolts to throw it in. So I'll buy a new one, and that way it's got the plastic tube sticking out and the hoses can slide, the vacuum lines can slide on properly. This was just for now. I couldn't take the ticking noise anymore. And now that I've fixed that, I can hear another vacuum leak hissing somewhere. I've been poking around for a few minutes, spraying around, haven't found it yet, but I'm sure I will. Here, it's nice and quiet now, no more tick-to-tick that was coming from those 2 tubes coming off the manifold. So hopefully that holds up long enough for me to get the part in from Rock Auto and just swap it out. I drove this thing over 2 hours today, round trip, which, you know, is no big deal, but granted, it's the longest drive I've taken it on yet. Highway, city, everything in between, even a little bit off-road. It is a 2-wheel drive truck. It was originally from Texas, which probably explains why the rocker panels are still intact. The thing drives fantastic. Head on the highway, this thing flies. It's running really well. One thing off the list, the only thing this truck, and again, this is a temporary repair, I'll do it correctly soon when I get the parts. The only thing left to do on this vehicle is the heater core, which is a huge job. I don't feel like pulling the whole dashboard out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it some time, make sure the truck holds up mechanically. I think that it will. At 238,000 miles, it's had all the bullshit stuff taken care of already, I'm sure. So as long as it continues to operate well, then maybe I'll pull it apart one weekend, do 5 hours one day, 5 hours the next. Maybe I can get it done even quicker. That's just book time. But one weekend I'll pull it apart and do the heater core if I feel the truck is a good truck, which so far I do, but it's only been a few days. I have to give it more time. Aside from that, she's great. Take a look on the inside. And I patched up that seat with some matching tape. Again, just temporary until I get some replacement cushions. That's something my 04 Escalade doesn't even have. And it was never an option for my generation Escalade over there. Pretty neat feature. Works the same way going back down. As well as the power rear seats, which oddly enough, the Cadillac SRX had the same era of my Escalade, but the Escalade did not. You can see the back of that seat definitely still needs to be cleaned. Just took care of the priority areas for now. And that's that. So ended up not being a bad truck after all. I just got a real bad vibe from it that day at first, after seeing the interior and thinking the suspension was shot and seeing smoke coming out of the engine bay, which ended up being this EGR leak. It was just the exhaust. And you guys all say, oh, it was only $300, how can you complain? Well, what you don't realize is I'm stuck with these for a month and a half until I get the title. So I didn't want to have some $300 ship box sitting around my yard that was broken. I couldn't do anything with it, couldn't sell it, couldn't scrap it, couldn't whatever. So now that I know it's a good vehicle, I'm thrilled with the purchase. This is in daily driver condition now. So now that I've had enough fun with this thing, playing around with it, I'm going to start playing around with the Mercedes. And you guys will see a video on that real soon. Thanks for watching. Keep an eye out for the next one.